Book title, Akhand Jyoti, July-August 2020. Chapter 11, Sadhana and Sanjeevani, Elixir of Sadhana. 1. Now listen to the chapter. The deal for the purchase of land for Gayatri Tapobhumi was finalized at rupees 6,000. Shri Ram had no ready capital or resource for this purchase. Taiji offered to sell some of the property and bonds of zamindari they owned in Unwakeda. But Shri Ram had already denied this offer. He did not want to take more than rupees 1,100 that she had already vowed for. The magazines and books written and published by him were already kept at a minimal price, so the sales were just sufficient to manage the wheel moving. The interest on deposits of annual subscriptions of Akhand Jyoti was used in the publication of the books, and income from books was consumed in the paper, ink, and printing charges for Akhand Jyoti. Just about a month ago, he had planned to publish a series of specialized books on Gayatri Mahavidya. His books titled Gayatri Yoga, Gayatri Tantra, Yagya Vidyan, and Gayatri Ki Uchastarya Sadhana were already published. Now he wanted to write a comprehensive volume on Gayatri Mahavidyan. His objective was that this should be an authentic treatise containing the knowledge of Gayatri extracted from the Shastras, ancient Indian texts, the evidential experiences and views of the Siddhas. Accomplished sadhakas, scholars and great personalities with the Gayatri mantra, and thorough analysis of this mantra and effects of its japa sadhana in a scientific light. He wanted that the volume should be complete so that no seeker of any knowledge or information on Gayatri would have to search for any other texts. Navratri's time was still ahead by more than a month. Shri Ram had to arrange for money before this. But the major problem was from where to collect it. He used to wear handloom kurta and dhoti. While going for some meeting or formal program, he would put on a handloom jacket. That is all. He only had 2 or 3 kurtas and dhotis. Mataji's living was also austere like him. As such, there was no shortage of money, but they never felt the need for any more clothes or other facilities. That way, they both hailed from well-off families. An exceptionally brilliant, sagacious scholar like Shri Ram could have been among the who's who of the world, but he and Mataji had opted for austere lifestyle by choice. This is what suited their saintly attitude. Whatever income he used to get from the literature, or whatever amount or support was received as donations, were used for propagation of Gayatri Mahavidya. Books and magazines about this precious knowledge were the primary means of its further dissemination. He had also written some books to eliminate the prevalent misconceptions about spirituality and Indian culture. All these were published on an almost no-profit basis. His writings were so thoughtful, logical, and inspiring that anyone who had ever read any of his articles' books wanted to read him more. His style of writing was so lucid that even more in-depth knowledge used to be easily grasped by the readers. By 1950, over 100 of his books were published. Ever since the proposal for Gayatri Tapobhumi was finalized, they often used to discuss about resources required for it. But there was no tension as such. Shri Ram was firm on his idea that the land should be purchased using their own personal resources. People's collective contributions should be accepted only after that for construction. His resources were his personal property and the minimal income from the magazine and books. Taiji suggested him to sell the share he deserved from the ancestral property in the native village, Unwakeda. But he repeated the pledge that village property should be used only for the development of the village. He already got Taiji's approval for opening a school on the land he owned there. But Taiji said, now in view of our urgent requirements for another good purpose, we should sell it. But Shri Ram did not budge. Then she suggested to lend it or to mortgage it for some time for 6,000 rupees. Shri Ram did not refuse this advice outright. First, he thought it was a good alternative, but soon he was out of the dilemma. He said, Taiji, we can lend or mortgage only our property, but that is no longer our property. I have already pledged to donate it for the development, mainly through education of Unwakeda. So now I have no moral right on it. For me, it is now the property of the village. Taiji kept insisting, look, my son, We are not breaking the promise. We did not say when the school would be built, so we can always do that later, after the present need is over. See, it is going to be only a temporary arrangement to meet the emergency. But Sri Ram was not convinced. He said, if we donate money in a temple, then it becomes the property of the temple, no matter how long that amount is kept unused. We never use it for our purposes or borrow it anymore. Now Taiji had given up on this advice. Sri Ram was again engrossed in thoughts. Mataji was quietly listening to their conversation so far. After the silence of a few moments, Sri Ram suggested that we should sell off our press. Maybe, after a couple of years, we will be able to repurchase it. In the meantime, we shall get the magazine and books printed in some other press. But even this won't serve the purpose. We won't get rupees 6,000 from it, Taiji remarked. Sri Ram told that they will get about 2,000 rupees from it, and will find out some way to arrange for the remaining. Now Mataji immediately suggested this some way. She offered to sell off her jewelry. After all, what is the use of this jewelry for me, she said. Mataji had earrings, necklace, kundan, pair of thick bangles, waist lace, and some other gold jewelry such as hansuli, a traditional styled heavy chain, etc. They estimated the cost and found that the total price of this and the press would be more than 6,000. Mataji said, we should try selling the jewelry first. If that itself is sufficient, there is no need to sell the press. The machines of the press are used every day. There will be lots of problems without this. Having or not having jewelry is immaterial. After this planning, Sri Ram's mind was free of the first problem on the way of Gayatri Tapobhumi. Now the purchase and formalities of registration, etc., were to be completed in the near future. The plan of Sahasranshu Brahmayagya that was approved in the meeting of the volunteers a couple of days ago had been formatted for printing. This was the beginning of the foundation of a global family-like organization, Gayatri Parivar. A notice in this regard was to go in Akhand Jyoti and other magazines edited written by Sri Ram. It was also agreed upon to mail this message and plan of the special yagya of collective participation separately to all parijans and acquaintances for broader circulation. Sri Ram kept the handwritten manuscript of this matter in his sadhana room in front of the Akhand Deepika. It was to go to press the next day. Sprinkled spots of saffron. It was some day in January last week. Vasant Panchami was round the corner. The manuscript of the Sahasranshu Brahmayagya plan and message inviting sadhakas for collective participation was kept in sadhana room in the night. In the morning, it was found that it had some saffron spots sprinkled on it. Mataji was the first witness to this miracle. When Mataji went into the sadhana room, the early morning before dawn to clean it and arrange necessary tools for worship on the puja vedi, she saw some saffron-colored spots on the manuscript. She noticed it but thought maybe the paper itself had some design, or maybe her husband had sprinkled these as part of worship before placing these papers here in the feet of the deity. After taking a bath, when Sri Ram entered the sadhana room for his daily japa upasana, he was surprised to see the saffron spots on the manuscript. He asked Mataji about it. Now it was clear before them that this is the blessing of the omnipotent goddess Gayatri. But Sri Ram told Mataji not to let anyone else know about it, as otherwise this news will spread, and people would get trapped in curiosity or blind faith in miracles and supernatural events, etc. Sri Ram used to say that the color of saffron is the same as that of the rising sun. It symbolizes piety and radiance, and is therefore given so much importance in the Indian culture. After his japa upasana that day, Sri Ram sent the manuscript for composing in the press. Akhand Jyoti magazine's next issue was due in March 1952. So there were still 2 months by the time it would reach the readers. In order to send timely information so that more and more people could be informed, the composed material was also separately printed in pamphlet form and was posted to all readers and acquaintances. Gayatri Tapobhumi was to be inaugurated next year on Gayatri Jayanti, i.e., about a year and a half from the time the pamphlets were dispatched. The collective Anushthan Sadhana, Shasranshu Brahmyagya, was to continue till then. It was really a large-scale endeavor. For this purpose, all Parijans were guided to do 10 rosary count, i.e., 10 times 108 times, which requires repeated japa for about 1 hour, japa of Gayatri mantra every day. The total number of japas to be completed collectively in the prescribed duration was 125 million times. As this was an Anushthan, Parijans were advised to observe fasting on specific days, apart from regular fasting of 1 day per week. They were also supposed to offer 1/100th of the japa count oblations, i.e. a total of 1.25 million ahutis, oblations of herbal preparation, in yagya with loud chanting of this mantra. They were therefore advised to arrange a series of yagyas at different places to fulfill this requirement till Gayatri Jayanti next year. Doing altruistic services and spreading good literature and good thoughts were also part of this unprecedented collective endeavor. It was expected that this experiment would train nearly 1.25 lakhs, 125,000 dedicated Gayatri sadhakas. The pamphlet reached all Parijans and acquaintances. They also passed on the messages to other like-minded persons. About 10 to 15% of those whom the news reached enthusiastically agreed to participate. Some people expressed disagreement. According to them, except for the authorized ones, nobody else should do the japa upasana of the Gayatri mantra. Sri Ram had made it clear in the message that there is no constraint of gender, caste, or creed. Anyone whose lifestyle, thoughts, and conduct are sattvika can do the japa of Gayatri mantra. He received some letters protesting against this liberal approach. Response to criticism. His approach was criticized during a function in the Girls' Intermediate College at Mathura. The occasion was the celebration of Independence Day. Renowned personalities and scholars of Indian culture present in the city were invited on this occasion. Sri Ram was also among the invited speakers. After seeing him sitting on the dais, one learned speaker twisted his speech. He said, "We are independent, but some people are misusing this right to disobey our traditional norms. They are advocating and allowing the knowledge of holy Vedas, Gayatri mantra, and yagya freely accessible to everybody. This is not freedom. This is indiscipline. Sagacious scholars should come forward to stop such arbitrary practices." The scholars present on this occasion could easily guess whom the speaker was pointing at. Sri Ram had been receiving such challenges or criticism from orthodox religious leaders and scholars indirectly, either via some messengers or through letters. Whenever necessary, Sri Ram used to respond adequately. But here, the situation was different. Pandit Vallabh Pandey completed his speech indirectly focused on Sri Ram's criticism. Then, Mr. Maniram Sharma stood to speak. His speech was somewhat more acrimonious in trying to prove that Sri Ram's approach was condemnable. Then someone else spoke. His address was mainly for the students. The function was proceeding smoothly. But the bitter criticism triggered by the earlier two speakers had raised many eyebrows. Everyone on the dais seemed to be wanting clarification from Sri Ram. Some eyes were looking at him with anger and scorn, as though he had committed a crime. On his turn, the compere, Professor Ramadar Dwivedi, invited Pandit Sri Ram Sharma to speak. Sri Ram gracefully walked to the mic and started speaking in his usual serene style. He eloquently elaborated upon the universal dignity of Indian culture and cited authentic references of the ancient texts about Gayatri mantra and yagya. Mentioning excerpts of these texts, he made the point clear that anyone, irrespective of caste, creed, or gender, who regards and follows the ideals of a rishi as a guide and who adopts the yagya teaching of altruistic attitude and ethical conduct, has the right to chant and do japa sadhana of Gayatri mantra and participate in the fire ritual of yagya. He said, as far as strict adoption of all ritualistic practices is concerned, the Smriti scriptures, doctrines of rishis like Manu, Yajnavalkya, Apastamb, etc. say even if a Brahmin fails in doing the regular worship rituals, Sandhyavandan, and japa of Gayatri mantra for 3 or more days, he is a Vratya Sangyaka, an immoral person, one who has fallen from religion. Specific kinds of prayshchit, penitence with penance, are recommended for such a person. After completing these, the defaulter also has to get his thread ceremony done again. Sri Ram's speech was persuasive and gripping. He further reminded the august audience, "We are now driven by the medieval times misinterpretation and distortion of many of our ancient cultural teachings. For example, we have linked the Varna system to caste and creed. Whom we regard as Shudras today are those whose ancestors, as per the authentic ancient texts available today, were the authors of several Vedic hymns and teachings. For example, Chandogya Upanishad mentions that a Gadiwan, Cartman, Raitya, had taught Vedas to Jensruti. But, according to our classification today, a Gadiwan is counted as a Shudra. Rishi Mahidar has written a commentary on Aitreya Upanishad. He also was a Shudra by the so-called caste. Noted scholar and acharya of later times, Sayana, in his commentaries on Vedic texts, has written that he was born to a Dasi, maidservant. Maha Aitreya Upanishad mentions of Kavashaya scholars teaching the deeper science and philosophy of Yagya. Their community also was Shudra by creed. Rishi Elish was also born as Shudra, but he has written many mantras in the 10th mandala of the Rig Veda. Citing the Shrauta Sutras of Rishi Bharadwaj and Rishi Katyayan, Sri Ram pointed out, these sutras recommend that anyone who is devoted and prepared to do yagya, i.e., has goodwill and also does good deeds and service, should be allowed to do yagya, fire ritual. He also informed that the Shastras mention of one King Sudas, who belonged to a Shudra family, but was renowned for his expertise in Vedic knowledge. Rishi Vashishta had presided over the sacraments of King Sudas's enthronement. Sri Ram's discerning arguments had not only responded to his critics, but also made the audience aware of the fact that it is one's conduct and deeds, and not one's creed or caste, that was given importance in our Vedic culture. Interestingly, his speech did not stray from the topic of the talk, as with the citing of Shastric evidence. He also underlined the fact that independent India should regain its lost glory by getting rid of the misconceptions and superstitions of the medieval times, and by progressing as a caste-free nation that nurtures human values. His brilliant talk was well received and admired by the audience with applause. The two scholars who had pointed fingers against him quietly disappeared from there. Professor Ramadar Dwivedi told after the function that he wanted to call those pundits to respond if they had any doubts in what you said, but they were not traceable. Many scholars and other dignitaries present on occasion warmly greeted Sri Ram and praised his speech. To be continued.